I now call on Alec Rowley. Generous 7 minutes, Mr Rowley.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I also welcome the debate that we've had this afternoon, and I think that there's been a real positive contribution, a real desire to create a social security system in Scotland that builds on and improves what's already there, and hopefully that recognises that that social security system can be used as part of a joined-up approach to tackle inequality and poverty across Scotland. And if we can start maybe with the points that Joe McAlpine made, because I think there was some important points here around localism and local government. I certainly, and I've read some of the evidence that was given around local authorities actually having responsibility for the decisions on local benefits, and I actually agree with that point about the poor law and what part of Scotland. I think there has to be a Scottish-wide criteria that's put in place. So that's not what I was arguing. What I'm actually arguing about is the work programme. I'll come back to that. But in terms of the point that Joe McAlpine makes, in terms of the eligibility criteria, I absolutely agree with the point, and I have seen it in local government over many years that I was in local government, where as the financial pressure comes on local authorities, suddenly the eligibility criteria for home care, for a whole range of services, starts to be changed and starts to be tightened, and it's been a way of local authorities addressing some of the cuts. And the people that are obviously on the receiving side of that are having their services cut, it's not the right thing to do. But it is an interesting point, and it was also a point that was made in one of the briefs that was sent in, where it was stated that at present the social security budget is demand-led, with no set limit on the amount of money available. This will not be the case for devolved benefits, meaning careful planning must take place to ensure benefit entitlements are sustainable going forward. And I would hate to see what I witnessed over many years in local government, where eligibility criteria keeps getting tightened and people keep falling off being eligible for some of these services just purely because of the finances and the cuts. That's been the experience in local government. But in terms of the work programme, what I would say is that if you look right across Scotland at local government, you will see some really innovative projects, some innovative works that are going on to be able to get people and support people. Far too many people, and it's a recognition that's not in place with the current work programme, which is about ticking boxes. People that are far, far removed from the labour market they lack, in many cases, even the basic skills, the skills for life, if you like, and it needs intense programmes that are put in place to support people. And that point has been made by a number of briefings for organisations that have come in previously. Now, there are third sector organisations out there that are very good at this work, but it needs to be coordinated, in my view, not from this Parliament and not Scotland-wide, but it needs to be looked at on a regional basis across Scotland, and local government has a key role to play in the coordination of that as part of a wider economic strategy that needs to be in place, a regional economic strategy that needs to be in place right across Scotland. And that's the importance, and that's the important role of the local authorities. And I would hope that the Minister would not be ruling out the local authorities having a key role to play in the strategic direction of the work programme and indeed the delivery of the work programme, and they can pull together the third sector. But importantly, if we're really going to make this work, we need to involve business and industry. And so they should be partners coming together in terms of this, and it should form part of an anti-poverty strategy in Scotland, because if we are serious about tackling inequality and tackling poverty, we need to recognise that giving people the ability to be able to get the skills and get the work is absolutely crucial. I have said time and time again that throughout the history of the labour movement, people never marched for benefits, they marched for jobs. They need the opportunities, they need the skills if we're going to tackle poverty, and we need decent jobs. And the example of Amazon that I gave and Joe McAlpine referred to, I speak to people that are now trying to go through the agencies to get jobs in Amazon because they're desperate. and that type of poorer employment that's there, we've got to replace, and that's why I come back to the living wage. But even the living wage on its own, Annabel Goulby sums up, but she didn't talk about tax credits. And the fact is that the cuts in tax credits, and the point I think was made that George Osborne coming forward with his next round, the cuts in tax credits will drive hundreds of thousands of people in this country into further inward poverty. Yeah.
But I agree completely and utterly with Mr Rowley on tax credits. What I can't understand is why the Labour Party chose to walk through the lobbies with the Tories to have tax credits remain reserved, when this place, which is much more progressive, could have done much, much better if that power and the resource along with it came here.
Well, the same point was made by Jo McAlpine when she said about the universal credits and why would it not have been better to have the control over universal credits. I can only say to you that my view is that we've got to start to talk seriously about how we're going to use the powers that this Parliament has, the significant and substantial powers that this Parliament is going to have. But I'm absolutely clear about this. That's, for me, not the end of the road. I support Home Rule for Scotland. I'm absolutely clear that we're on a journey. Devolution is a journey, and if we need more powers, then we need to make the case, and we will make the case on that journey to wherever that journey eventually takes us to. But right now, I believe the people of Scotland, we've got the Scotland Bill gone through the Parliament, it's been agreed through the Parliament. We now need to start to set out very clearly how we're going to use those powers to tackle the inequality, the poverty, and share the wealth better within Scotland. And that's how we need to move forward. The point was also raised by Jo McAlpine about sanctions, and Alec Johnson comes in and makes a point. Are we saying there would never be sanctions? In most walks of life, there is some type of sanction there. The point is that the sanctions that are being introduced through the welfare reforms of the Tory government are absolutely unacceptable. And you just need to meet people and families out there in communities, in my constituency and the Cow and Meath constituency, and I'm sure across Scotland, and hear their stories, to know that they're barbaric. People are being picked on, people are being singled out, and people are being starved. Families in this modern day being starved and driven to food banks. That cannot be acceptable. So do we oppose Tory sanctions? Absolutely, we oppose Tory sanctions. And that comes to the heart of the point that Margaret McDougall made, because Margaret McDougall made the point that in the Scottish social security system, sitting at the heart of that has to be respect and dignity. And that's what we need to build, that respect and that dignity. So the point that John Wilson made about it being easier to fill forms in, but also people being treated with respect and treated with dignity. I would sum up, the presiding officer, by just making the point that Hugh Henry made. And I would finish on this point. Hugh talked about the winter fuel allowance and the cold weather allowance. These were policies that were introduced by Gordon Brown as Chancellor, as was the tax credits. And what we need to think about is the principles that were put in place. What were the principles when these policies were put in place? In terms of the winter fuel allowance, the cold winter payment, the principle was that older people will tend to be in their houses during the winter. They're not out working. They tend to need more heat. Therefore, they get cold. And therefore it was right that there shouldn't be fuel poverty. So we need to look at some of the principles that were in there when these types of things were brought in place by the last Labour government, and ensure that they stay in place no matter the colour of the administration in this place. Thank you.
Thanks very much.